Hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Mismatch. So for me, family has always been something that is treated as permanent. My parents, if you know them, you know why. Something that you work through no matter what. But today, more and more people are questioning that idea. In fact, this research was staggering to me. It shows that 1 in 4 adults are estranged from at least one family member. And that could be mom, dad, cousin, grandparent, sibling. A study found that, again, 27% of adults experience estrangement. So this is a common thing. And that raises some questions in so many factors of your life, and especially when you're dating someone. Like, what happens when the person that you're falling for wants to meet a family that you don't speak to anymore? Today's guest, Vivian Meraki, a parent-child relationship expert, trauma-informed coach, and the founder of Unshakeable Parenting, a platform that helps families navigate difficult transitions and rebuild healthier relationships, is here in studio. So she's also the author of Parenting Through Divorce and has spent years helping parents and adult children understand the emotional patterns that shape family dynamics, boundaries, hard, and of course, healing. Vivian has spent over 20 years in corporate leadership and public outreach working with organizations like United Nations. Today, she combines trauma-informed practices, somatic tools, and real-world experience to help people navigate estrangement, repair relationships when possible, and set boundaries when it's hard not to. Most importantly, she helps people understand how those early family dynamics influence the way that we show up in our lives with love, dating, and really any relationship. Vivian, it's so good to have you here.
It's so good to be here. Thank you.
So Vivian, how did you get started on this journey?
Yeah, so I think that a big part of my journey has also been born out of my own pain and what our family was going through. I lived the perfect life that I think my family wanted for me.
Because what was that look like?
Yeah, so what that looked like was, actually, I might even take a little bit of a step back to understand me. My story is that I grew up in the Texas of Canada, and it was in the 1980s. So at that time, just to give a little bit of context, in the 70s, there were still signs on restaurant and bar doors that would say, no Chinese or dogs allowed.
Wow.
So it was like that. So in the 80s, those signs were gone, but a lot of the sentiment was still not that welcoming and warm. So I got really good at suppressing my emotions, being very stoic, and growing up getting good at things like performing, productivity, hard work, and getting really good grades. So I was an honor student throughout. Not so good that I would stand out because I didn't want that, but, good enough that I was doing well. Mm-hmm. But I wasn't good at understanding what I liked, what I wanted, what I needed, or even asking for those things. So that was me growing up. And then later on, as I lived my life, I reached a point where I ended up getting a lot of the things that my family wanted for me. And those things looked like having a great stable career, 6-figure salary, working, leading a lot of high-performance teams, working with Fortune 500 brands, startups, agencies, consultancies, including the United Nations, like you were mentioning. And I had the marriage, and I had 2 beautiful children. And the older one was a son, which for Chinese families is really good, right?
You're checking off all the
boxes.
Yeah.
Second child was a girl, amazing, really good, and had a beautiful house that we had gutted, redesigned, and and was supposed to be our forever home. So everything looked good on paper. Life was successful, but deep down inside, what I realized was that something felt like it was missing. I wasn't happy, and the longer that time went, I realized that not only was I burning out, but I was less and less fulfilled. And that something missing was me, the part of me that mattered, the part of me that knew what I needed, what I wanted, what I liked, and felt like I had permission to go for those things. And I realized that I had defined myself as a side character of my own life. And sometimes I would lie in bed at night thinking about that and thinking, well, maybe, Vivian, not everyone's meant to be a main character. Some people are side characters to support the main character to do the real stuff, right?
There's this quote in this movie that I love. I think it's The Holiday, and they say, you are the main character of your movie. Your life is your movie.
That's right.
For sure.
Yeah. And in those moments, I felt like my heart would break a little bit more. Aww. And I would get a little smaller, until something shifted when I started asking myself those really tough questions. Like, what happens if this is life for the next 10, 20, 30 years? What if it stays the same and nothing changes? And that's when something cracked open. It's like, no, like I'm not okay if it stays like this. I will disappear. I will watch myself disappear. And I don't want my children watching their mother disappear. And so I started to make some really big changes. I decided I was going to be the main character of my own movie. And that meant that our marriage came to an end. It meant that I walked away from my 24-year career.
Wow.
And I got my own place and started to rebuild from scratch. And then I really wanted to have a material impact on people in life that was not just because I was a marketing executive so like a lot of work behind the scenes, helping brands bring things to life.
Mm-hmm.
The marketing is not, even though it's front facing, it's not having a direct impact and change on people's lives.
Right.
So I went into coaching. I stumbled across somatic work. And somatics, what that is the root word is soma, which is Greek for the aliveness of a living organism. So somatics as a practice gets you in touch with your own aliveness through the senses. And what was really beautiful about that process as I explored was that all of a sudden I was starting to get in touch with me, what I wanted, what I needed, who I was, all those years that had kind of been forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to have breakthroughs where I hadn't for years because I'd been in talk therapy, I'd read the books, listened to podcasts, like all of the self-development, mindfulness, mindset work, everything. But it only got me so far. And I knew that there's something more to crack open. I didn't know how or what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, it was somatics that helped me. And I felt like, whoa, like there's this whole other world, this whole other world of me for me to discover and appreciate. And I loved it so much that I ended up getting trained and certified in it as well.
So what does that discovery look like? Because often I think people assume that they're in touch with their senses and their body,
Mm-hmm.
when in reality, there's like a massive disconnect. And I can honestly say that's something I've struggled with my entire life. And it's like my mom would say, like, how do you not know how you feel? Like physically, like I would be so sick and I couldn't even like identify what was hurting or why something was. And I think that's like trickled into my adulthood in like a massive way. And only recently have I been doing work to like feel more connected to my body.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a strange thing because you think it's just assumed.
Yes,
right?
You think it's assumed, but so many of us are actually conditioned for the opposite. So the way that I often explain this to my clients is that most of us don't realize that our body and the way we're wired is actually 80 to 90% wired from body to brain through our vagus nerve network. So when we're experiencing stress, we're actually experiencing it 80 to 90% through the body, and then that information then gets transmitted to the brain for interpretation. But so many of us are taught to ignore, dissociate.
Yeah, mine's not transmitted.
It's not like we block it, like it gets compartmentalized,
Yeah.
but it needs to go somewhere so it stays in there. So that's when we get these blocks. Sometimes we get chronic pain. Sometimes we get illness. Depends on what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But it stays in the body depending on, the situation and experience. And most of us are trying to squeeze through the 10 to 20% brain to body to control and take over and, transmit from brain to body because we don't want to feel it. It's uncomfortable. Sometimes, and I think like some of the older ways of doing things too is, like don't cry. It's okay. You're fine.
Mm-hmm.
Like we mean really well. It's well-intentioned, but we're unintentionally actually kind of suggesting to the other person, you're too much. You're too sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's too much for me. I don't want to deal with it. It's uncomfortable. And the social cues are don't do that. So even more it gets enforced not to be in touch and not to experience the emotion. And I think that's often what happens. And that's how we start getting out of touch is when that fight or flight response happens, when that nervous system response happens, because it's not just fight or flight, it's fight, flight, freeze, sometimes fawn, right? Like these different things that we adopt as our survival mode to help get us through, help us survive social circles, social dynamics, especially because the way that we're wired is we have to connect and belong in the community, because if we're kicked out, we would die. So it feels like a life and death thing. So we adopt these ways of surviving. And so many of us get disconnected. And plus life is a rush. We're hustling, we're moving, we're busy. So there isn't necessarily the time and intention in connecting and really feeling what we're feeling.
How do we set aside, whether it be questions or habits or time to make that connection to your body.
Yeah, I think that we all probably have read, Atomic Habits. We really believe in, like thinking about productivity and the rituals and the habits that we form. I call them rituals. I like rituals because there's like a little bit more depth and ceremony in it. And so I really encourage my clients, for example, to adopt a lot of the somatic practices as ritual as part of their day, even if it's only 1 to 5 minutes a day, to really connect with the body, to really notice their breath, to really notice what's going on, and to do some of the practices that I share with them. And, in those moments where we feel the emotion, it's to really accept ourselves and not judge the emotion, and rather the emotion is a signal. It's trying to tell us something and how we truly feel about something. It doesn't mean that it's the only truth for us and we need to follow what the emotion tells us to do. But instead, we are an observant third party almost. And we're going, okay, like I'm feeling that. I see it. I feel it. And really letting that emotion release. Because in somatics, it's actually all about, we treat emotions like energy. And so just like there's a beginning, there's an end, but it needs to really run its course to be released. If we block it, then it stays. And so it's really being present to what's going on in that moment.
And it's so interesting because we're told from the get-go to be less emotional I've probably been told my whole life, and by like teachers and things like that, not so much my parents, but suck it up. Right. You're fine. Keep going. Right. And like, I find myself saying that though, because that's the mentality that I have now, which is why, once a month there's like a meltdown that happens.
It comes out.
Because it comes out. Yeah. It all comes out. Yeah. But that's not healthy to do that. How do you start so that you don't end up like someone like me?
Oh, I think you're being hard on yourself.
Like, how do you check in or how do you raise kids to have that check-in with themselves and have that understanding? Well, still, you want to raise like resilient kids, of course. You don't want them to be crybabies, but at the same time, you want to allow your baby to cry.
Yeah. So like there's two things that you mentioned there that I think are really important. Number one, and part of what I talk a lot about, is the way we define resilience, in my opinion, is wrong. Because the way that we define resilience is how much can you withstand without breaking. So it's all about taking on more. And it's all about an external validation of how much is appropriate for you to take, and you just stay put, don't break, right? But when we look at the word resilience, the Latin origin of it is resilire, which means to recoil or to bounce back. So it's actually not necessarily about withstanding, it's more about recoil and bounce back. And the somatic definition of resilience is actually how quickly you return to your center. So I define center as that place and that feeling that we feel when we feel really safe and held. And to me, emotional safety is all about, and this is related to everything else that we're going to talk about today, is it's all about how safe you feel to fully be yourself and to be accepted without judgment or something else happening that you feel bad about.
It sounds so simple, and yet that's actually so hard.
It's so hard. So when you think about resilience in this new definition, how quickly I return to my center where I feel like I can be me, and then turning around from that place of strength, power, and centering and grounding, and then facing the adversity from that place instead. Now, resilience is about movement. It's about adaptability. It's about understanding what I need, what I want, how much I want to titrate according to, dealing with that situation, and how much load I want to take on right now. And it all of a sudden becomes empowerment. It becomes agency. It becomes choice. And it becomes movement instead of static. I just need to withstand this. So it's a really different definition. So I think that's the first part. Resilience and the way we define it really changes how we interact with our children and our expectations of them and of ourselves. And then the second aspect is that when our children are, I'll actually give an example from my family, because what happened when we were going through the divorce, our divorce, we took a long time. It probably took 4.5 years to come to completion. And it was very intentional, because both me and my co-parent wanted to make sure that we put the children first and support them and give them time to transition. And truth be told, I also wanted to give my co-parent time to transition because I was the one who made the decision. And so everything seemed fine. I had some really deep, very age-appropriate conversations with my children about the change over the years. And so they were thriving. They were doing great until mommy moved out. that change rocked their world. And what I watched and witnessed was my children crumbling into this crippling anxiety where they couldn't even let me out of their line of sight.
Oh.
And just like the school drop-offs were impossible, transitioning between homes became really hard. Even me taking a bag of garbage down to the garbage chute was next to impossible without
Everything's
us
just
all.
heightened.
Yeah, it was all heightened. It was like, if I can't see mommy, then something bad is going to happen to mommy.
No.
Maybe mommy will die. Like it was like that level of stress. And so, we signed them up for child therapy, but that's only once a week, 50 minutes. And I couldn't help but feel like there's more that I could be doing in all the other days that I'm watching this anxiety happen.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, I actually worked with them through the somatics that I had learned and in my coaching practice, and converting a lot of my practices to be age appropriate for the kids. And that's actually what led to the book, because I watched it transform them.
Wow.
And the methodology is really like being present with them in their feeling, helping them to process what's happening for them. Like we used art and drawing what we felt. So when it was harder for them to process those early days, sometimes I would support them in terms of doing the somatic practice. Like, what do you feel right now? Where do you feel it? Do you see a color? Do you notice a shape or a texture? And as they started to really go deeper and be present to what they're noticing there, then all of a sudden, oh, that was sadness. Okay. It's okay to feel the sadness. Like, what do you notice with the sadness? What do you think the sadness is trying to tell you?
Mm-hmm.
And exploring that. And what's really interesting is that with kids, it comes naturally because it hasn't been conditioned out of them.
Right.
So they're able to feel it. And what's really interesting is even up to recently, my son came into my room the other night saying, Mommy, I feel this anxiety and sadness in my body. And do you think it's because he's an empath? Do you think that I'm absorbing someone else's, or do you think it's mine? And I was like, well, let's find out. And he's 11.
Wow.
Yeah. And so we went in.
That was my next question.
Yeah.
How old is he?
Yeah. And so we did the somatic practice, and, we processed it, and it turned out it was his. And it turned out for him, it was really about giving himself the love and attention that he needed from him.
Oh.
And once he did a little bit of that, and it took 30 seconds, like for him to give that attention to himself, and then that sadness and the anxiety dissipated. It's like, oh, it's gone. Like that thing that I saw, the color, all that, it's gone now. It's been released. Okay, I'm ready to go to bed now. Love you, Mama. Good night. It was it was that fast. So I think that's what can happen. Obviously, not necessarily having to do a somatic practice every time they feel that. But I think that what it is to show them that I'm here, what you're feeling is normal, and I'm here to hold it with you. And I'm not here to fix it for you. I'm not here to rush you or make it better. But I'm here to say it's okay to have those feelings, and then it goes. What's interesting then is that my kids, like they rarely cry. They don't act out. There's no tantrums in our house, almost never. And they are what I would define as being really resilient kids. But they're also kids that really feel their feelings. Mm-hmm. But the way that they express it is with such maturity, because they know that
because they're in tune with how they can make sense of how they feel. Often when kids lash out, it's because they don't know what they're feeling. They're just,
And it's frustrating. Like, I don't know how to communicate this. And I think that's another really big tool that parents can use is giving your children the vocabulary to understand those feelings and helping them to bridge the gap so that when they're feeling that, like I used to use a feeling wheel and point to the face that you feel, and then we'd explore the emotion and then offer words like, could it be that it's this? Could it be that it's that? And by the time my son was around 18 months, which even when I think back sounds crazy to me.
18 months is so young.
18 months, he was saying in his way that he's acting out because he wanted attention from mommy. At 8, I think back, I'm like, did I remember that wrong? But like he was, it's in my diary. Like,
how do you even, so it's like my nephew is around that age, and actually my sister-in-law draws faces, and they point to faces to showcase what's what. But it's amazing how that progresses into that sort of knowledge of your own emotion.
Yeah.
We need more adults raised that way. For sure. But you see it in the development of how they communicate with you and with others, hey?
Yeah. Like my daughter will stop me, and she's 7, and she'll stop me and she'll say, Mommy, the thing you just said hurt my feelings, and I'm feeling sad right now. And I'm like, oh, like I was a little bit terse there. Okay, and then we stop, help her process the feeling. I apologize, obviously, which is something that didn't happen in my generation.
Well, no, parents never apologize.
There's
They're
no
always
such thing.
right. There's no such thing.
Yeah. And then she's like, okay, I feel better now. You know, I receive your apology is how she says it.
Oh, that's really beautiful. It's so mature. Like I can just hear a beautiful, soft little voice, you know, in saying that. But like parents, okay, so then this is more so for parents. How do you accept that? Because accepting that you're raising these humans to call you out is also like not normal of what we're used to, or we're conditioned to believe and take accountability for.
That's such a great question, because I think that what happens for a lot of parents is then they take it to mean something. And often that's their conditioning of what they experience. So, you know, that means you're disrespecting me. That means that I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, what does that mean? It means that I'm going to be punished. Like I actually grew up, I was never going to have children. So in my 20s, I decided I'm not having children. I am worried about my rage and anger issues. I'm worried about the harm that I experience that I might pass down to my kids. And I am never having kids. Like that was my decision. Yeah. Because I was so worried about what I might pass down. And I also knew my triggers. And it took a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of therapy. And I finally got to a point where I felt like, oh, like I think that I can become the woman that I can confidently say will not do harm. And it took a lot of time to really break down and process those things in terms of, if I'm wrong, what are the repercussions? And that feels like being cast out of my tribe. It feels like not belonging. It feels like death. It also feels like the really being afraid of the punishment of what that means to me, that I'm not worth anything, you know, the value of me as a person because I did something wrong. Especially because so much of my worth was attached to performance and achievements. So if you're not performing and you're not achieving, well, then you're not worth anything.
Right.
So if I'm wrong or get something wrong, well, then it means you're not achieving, you're not performing to the best of your ability. That means it means something really big. It means something that has nothing to do with the situation, with the child in the situation, right?
It's so fascinating to like ask yourself those deeper questions, because I mean, I don't think we do it enough. I'm grateful that because of this podcast, I have started to ask myself these questions and look inwards in scenarios of that. Like, so why am I feeling this way? And why is this person reacting this way? But also like how to approach then the situation moving forward too, because that's how things are going to get fixed. You're never going to get a good answer or a good reaction to something if you were like screaming, crying, you know, over emotional in that way. Like you have to be able to communicate your feelings.
Yeah. Yeah. And understanding. And I think that it's interesting to me because on the one hand, I'm so in tune with my feelings, almost like they're my children. But I'm also detached in that they're not mine, in the sense that they are signals, that it's not personal. It's not that I did something wrong or I'm a bad person or I don't have value or any of those things. It means that there's something coming up for me that I can look at and observe, and then to take the time to process that and dig deeper, like you said.
Do you think that once you become in tune with that you can let things go more easily as well? Like, I think it's really interesting how you said it. That's very like circular, and it's like there's a beginning and there's an end. And I think, and again, this is just like a selfish thing of like having trouble letting things go, because I think it's like I can't really process and understand it properly, that you hold on to it as well, which is not healthy. And
sometimes it's in the body, and it's not that we can't let go of it. I actually had someone in my life say to me, why don't you just let go? You know, like that, isn't that baggage getting heavy for you? And in that moment, I just kind of had to smirk, because I kind of went, well, I just, in this moment, gain an awareness of that, you know, that activation for me. I'm going to work on it, but it's not as easy as just letting it go. It's not a mindset like, oh, I'm going to will it with the mind, for all the reasons we talked about. Instead, I needed to go into the body, understand where that was coming from, what I'm really holding on to and feeling in there, and then slowly working with my body to release. And I think that's why with somatics, I experience so many breakthroughs, why my clients have so many breakthroughs, why it really eases so much and helped my children become who they are now, is because it ends up moving through the body and it's not held anymore. Like I've had people say to me, I spent my whole life trying to tell myself I was strong, but deep down I didn't believe it. And then once we got down into the body level for it to start moving, shifting, and releasing, in that moment, after that 40 minutes we spent together, working on that one piece, they were like, oh, I finally know it for the first time in my life.
Wow.
It's not that I think I'm strong, I am strong. And it's because they started to work in connecting the body to the mind rather than trying to force the mind to tell the body what it wanted the outcome to be.
So in being connected with your body, one of the things that comes up often is so we talked about like parent-child relationships, but also what about like romantic relationships and how that connection can kind of affect a romantic relationship and how you show up or how you receive even love from someone else?
I think it's really related and it's very similar. In all the same principles apply in that it's still about the emotional safety. It's still about being aware of what's coming up for you and the activations that you might be experiencing. And I think that in romantic relationships, it comes up a lot more. Like we get more activated because the sense of loss in disconnection feels that much more potent, and we can be really afraid of it. So, I think that knowing what is happening and then in those moments being able to work with the body and understanding the signals that come up, and then to be able to communicate to the other person in a more neutral way. And I don't mean neutral like I don't care. I mean neutral as in I'm not blaming you. I'm just telling you what's coming up for me. And for the other person, when they've done that work, to be able to receive it in the same way. Like I hear you. It's not personal to me, but this is something because I care about you, I want to work on with you. And it's both people working on themselves and working together on the relationship to get to the outcome that's good for everybody. Yeah.
I read a quote the other day that was saying like, if you feel like this constant like anxiousness in a relationship, it's like really unhealthy, and that people are conditioned to feeling like that and then stay in things much longer than they probably should.
Yeah, I think I'm a poster child for that.
Yeah.
Probably. Like I feel like I had now I look back and I realize I had a lot of anxious attachment, and the anxiety was normalized. So that felt normal. Some of the people that had entered my life that I think were really kind, really healthy, treated me well. I got bored. I didn't want to be with them. And I didn't even recognize those cues until like decades later, looking back. But I ended up in a lot of what turned into really toxic relationships throughout my life. I think because of the anxiety and feeling that was so normal in these relationships with emotionally unavailable men.
Yeah.
Basically. Yeah.
I can relate. I can definitely relate. And it just, it's you can't help but at a certain point, and I'm wondering what this point was for you, ask yourself the question, okay, this is the reoccurring trend. What am I like being attracted to, or what am I letting into my life that clearly is a reflection of me and not necessarily the other person?
Yeah, I feel like for me, I don't know that it was necessarily one point, but a moment for me that was really significant was actually when my dad passed. And my dad was someone that, like, I was really close to him. I was daddy's girl. I looked up to him so much when we were really close. But at the same time, he wasn't someone who was emotionally available because of his upbringing and the very traditional Chinese stoicism that we'd grown up with. And so I loved him, and I felt the love in our family. I felt the love from him. But he also was someone that traveled a lot. And I think that when he passed, it really brought me into a really heightened focus around my relationship with men, my relationship with him, and the future relationships that I had, and really taking a hard look at all of the different relationships in my life, all of the loss that I had experienced throughout my life. I actually mapped it all out. Wow. I actually processed and wrote down a lot of the experiences that I'd had back then, what I had felt were kind of, what was the loss that I had experienced at the time through each of those dynamics and relationships, some of the outcomes, and what I had decided for myself was my worldview as a result of them. And it was really illuminating. And I think that a lot of my earliest, thinking back, a lot of that loss and the experiences were really connected to what was normalized for me.
That's so interesting to go back and think about that. And also, like, I wonder, like, loss can mean so many different things. So, like, how do you identify, even in your own mind, it's like you ask yourself, did this affect me? Did this not affect me?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's my own mind of like I question myself. Like, could this have made a big impact in me? Like, how do you take note of that?
Yeah, I think so. One of my earliest losses was actually a Rice Krispie square.
Stop.
Yeah. That's why I'm bringing it up.
I mean, I'd be very upset. I love them.
So I'm going to use this as an example because it sounds so innocuous, right? Like it's like that was probably unexpected. Like for most people, it's like, oh, I lost my dog. I lost a Rice. So what happened was I was a cripplingly shy little girl for all the reasons we talked about. And so there was a teacher that I had in grade 2 who felt really sorry for me and this one other little girl. And she gave us a quarter. And she's like, it's a big sale. Go get yourself a treat.
Aww.
And then share it. So we went and got the treat. It was a huge to me. It was I'm like, it was huge. It was probably like normal, like that.
Like, I can dummy that in one bite today.
It's gone. So this Rice Krispie square is what we chose.
Okay.
And for me at home, when my mom would serve us meals, she would, like divvy it out on everyone's plate. And if you want more, you'd give more. So that's what I did. I like broke some off for her. And then I took some and we held on to the rest. And I thought that we were just going to eat it together like that. The other little girl was expecting that we just break it in half, which in retrospect makes total sense. You break it in half and then, you
have your half, I have my half. Mm-hmm.
But I think that I really enjoyed this idea of like, oh, I thought we were like dining together basically on this.
Yeah.
So I gave her some and then I ate some and I was giving her some, but she then ran to the teacher saying I wasn't sharing, that I was keeping the whole thing. The teacher didn't ask me what was up and basically ripped the Rice Krispie square right out of my hands.
Oh no.
And I'll never forget like that, like the rage in her eyes. She's like, if you can't even learn to share, then you don't deserve any.
Oh,
it was like really harsh.
That's terrible.
I think I was 7, right? Like super young. And I think that what I decided in that moment for myself in thinking back was like, I think that I need to be really clear about my communication in order to make sure that people don't misunderstand me so I don't experience something like that again.
Yeah.
And so I became a masterful communicator. I have my master's in international intercultural communications. Like I work in PR, I did marketing, right? Like I made it my career. But when I look back at some of the origins, like, oh, I think that's where it started.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
And so in your work and in your practice, you probably see your teacher and so many people that you work with.
There's aspects of it. But in a way, I'm a guide.
Yeah.
And like every person that I work with, ultimately they have their own answers within them, but I help to guide them towards accessing those answers.
That's so interesting and amazing. And like I said, we just need more humans who are like capable of being connected to their somatic self.
Thank you.
I think, honestly. So early in this conversation, when I had brought this up, and one of the things that I mean, you cover so many different things, Vivian, which makes an hour podcast very difficult and challenging, but also it just means that you're going to come back. But the stat that I had given off the top about family estrangement, it's so weird how this conversation has come up in multiple different facets of my life, with friends, with colleagues, with my own family, and hearing how common this is. Why do you think this is coming up? Why is this happening more and more?
I think that we are no longer just compromising. And we're really moving away from the old stoic way of doing things where you just swallow your emotions and you put up with things. And I think that, and you know, to be fair, that generation was living at a time of just sheer survival.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, survival as a group, survival as a family, no one is leaving. Also, it's a completely different landscape in terms of even like financial stability, financial freedom, all those things. And I think that emotional safety was a luxury back then,
Mm-hmm.
because as a family unit, you're just trying to survive. And there was a lot more, and I'll speak for myself in this case, which from a cultural perspective, there's a lot, you know, in our culture around duty and obligation and what family represents and helping people save face. Like, you're not going to, you know, cut someone off. Like, that does not make sense. Like, it's not even an option. So forget, like, you know, like if it's not even an option, it's not happening.
Yeah.
And if it happened, it would be such a shame to the family, and you would be the black sheep. Your family would be frowned upon by the whole community. Like, there are repercussions socially that made it really undesirable. It's just not going to happen. But I think times are changing. And I don't think that those kinds of social structures and that kind of pressure, I think that it's lessening now. And there is a lot more around the individual, around mental health, noticing mental health, you know, and like how it's been eroding, the culture that we're having right now around, you know, the way that we work, in my opinion, is really broken. You know, hustle culture, I believe, is toxic. Like, I believe in working hard, but it's not working hard to the extent that we're seeing right now, where people are literally, you know, dying at their desks. Like, it's becoming really, really toxic. And so I think that there's a lot of factors at play, but at the heart of it, it's a generation that's coming up saying, I want to matter. And I watched my parents go through what they went through, and I don't necessarily subscribe to the same things. And there's kind of like the sandwich generation between, you know, the old way where it was more of an authoritarian style parenting. I could probably spend a whole hour talking about that.
Mm-hmm.
But like, you know, authoritarian style parenting, and, you know, then there's like a swing to something different where that was harmful for me. I don't want to do that again. So there's got to be a different way. And then there was a bit of a split in terms of what we now call authoritative parenting, which is a kind of parenting where there is a lot of communication, clear boundaries. Yes, you know, it's about, you know, supporting, it is very attuned to your child, but it's also about the parent setting their expectations, their boundaries as well. I won't go into all the mechanics of it. And then there's also permissive parenting, which is really a huge emphasis on the child, what they want, etc., but not so much in terms of clear boundaries or the parents' needs and expectations as much. So, you know, and we can see that there's actually a backlash that's happening right now with that kind of parenting.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah,
and
huge.
Like, I feel like many people criticize that kind of parenting the most.
Yeah.
In fact, I feel like the authoritative parenting is what people want to go back to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's like, this is too much.
Yeah.
They have too much say.
They have too much say, and they're turning into snowflakes.
Yes.
You know, weak, not resilient, etc.
Yeah.
So we're doing like that's, and you know, the research shows that out of the 4 major types of parenting styles, that there's one that is the most effective, and that is the authoritative parenting. So it's the one. So to explain it a little bit, if you think about it in terms of 4 quadrants, and one spectrum, I'm going to use my language because I think it's a little clearer.
Yeah, please.
I call it expectations, and then on the other scale, I call it attunement. So on one end, you've got, you know, high expectations, high attunement. That's authoritative parenting. Yeah. So when you've got low expectations, high attunement, that's permissive parenting. And then when you go low and low, so low expectations, low attunement, that's neglectful. They call it neglectful parenting in the research. And then the last one is what we talked about when we started off with, which is low attunement, high expectations, is authoritarian parenting. And the lens that I put on this, that I don't think, like I haven't heard anyone talk about this.
No.
But my perspective in terms of why the one works is because if you think about it, attunement is a lot about the child. Expectation is a lot about the parent. And in all the other 3, it requires a sacrifice on one
or the other.
Yeah. So authoritative is your high attunement to the child, so you care about the child's needs. And then it's high expectations, and you care about the parent's expectations and their needs as well. So it's high. Authoritarian is parent is big, child is tiny. And then permissive is child is big, parent is small. And then you've got neglectful, which is low.
Bad across the board.
So it's just not great. So in my opinion, that is why authoritative parenting works best. And so gentle parenting, for example, which is really talked about a lot right now, it was created and intended to be an authoritative style of parenting, but people have,
Flipped it.
Not really understood it, applied it in different ways. It's gotten distorted and they flipped it. And it's drifted into permissive.
Permissive, that's what I was going to say.
Exactly. Yeah. And permissive.
It's like gone all the way left.
Yes. And that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Either.
Yeah.
For all the reasons that I think we're seeing right now. So it's really about staying in this space of authoritative parenting where you matter and your child matters. So part of the burnout that I think parents are experiencing right now is because, we've drifted into some of these other buckets where the parent matters less and they're giving so much and they're doing more, taking on more and compensating for their child. But really it's a drift. It's not a drift. It's not a drift back to authoritarian parenting that's going to work, because that's just going to get us back into what we came from.
Right.
But it's actually a movement towards authoritative parenting. And in my opinion, the somatic work, emotional intelligence, emotional literacy, that is authoritative parenting 2.0.
100%.
And that is going to raise children that are really attuned and compassionate and empathetic, but also grounded, boundaried, and productive.
Let's talk about boundaries,
Yeah.
because that's a part of, being an adult, being attuned to your needs and others, respecting that, and often creating that with family is difficult.
Yeah.
It's like, even with friends, honestly, but it's like, and I think especially if it's a new thing that you're trying out, people are like, oh, what are you talking about? We don't have boundaries. Like, it's, how do you create that with your family moving forward to have a healthier relationship with them, prioritizing you and what you need to be in a healthy mental state?
Yeah, that's a tough one. And every situation is going to be different. Every family's different. The dynamics are different. From my perspective, and I experienced this myself in our family. And where, on the one hand, for me, it's a consideration of myself. In many ways, it's actually authoritative parenting in relationships. So where am I coming from? What do I need? What's driving that need? And then there's also the consideration of the other person. Where are they coming from? Where are their needs? And so, with some of the relationships that I had, and I went through periods of estrangement with my family, and we've healed it and we've repaired it, and our relationships are really strong now. So I'm really, really happy about that. But it took a long time. And some of the conversations that I had to establish in the early days was, listen, like, when this happens or when you do this, it really hurts me. And I want you to know that I want a relationship with you, but I can't be in a relationship with you if this continues because of how much it hurts me. So,
so coming from an emotional state.
Yeah, like
it makes me feel this.
It makes me feel this, or like I'm owning the impact on me and I'm telling it to you, but I'm also offering you the option. So I'm also saying, are you open to this change? And if they say anything other than yes. So if it's not like a yes, I want to, if they're beating around the bush or I didn't intend this or right? Like, there's a lot of things.
There's always going to be.
There's going to be like, blame, shame, like all that, then it's a no. Then it's a not right now.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean the conversation is over. It just means not right now. And they probably need some time to think about it, process it. And there's, in a lot of cultures, especially in an older generation, there's a lot of pride and there's a lot of blame and shame. And felt shame, even if you're not blaming, but you're saying this behavior led to this. And sometimes I found that it helped also the way I said it, that if I'm saying I'm not blaming, I'm not saying you're a bad mother, bad parent, bad whatever, right? Like, I'm saying that this specific thing that you did is hurtful for me. So if you don't wish to continue to hurt my feelings, and when my feelings are hurt, I don't feel as good being around you, then I would really love for us to be able to change this dynamic.
I know it sounds so simple, but the way you phrase something can completely change the way that someone's going to react, and then thus can affect the relationship moving forward.
Yeah.
my grandfather says this quote all the time, and I think it's from Churchill. It says like the most deadly weapon is your tongue, because once you say something, it's really hard to take it back. So you have to be very intentional with how you say something, especially when you are coming from a place of like, wanting to make things better at the end of the day. And like, you're saying something because you care enough to communicate this, to fix this.
Yeah.
And so then my question is, Vivian, is like, how did you repair your relationship? And what did that journey kind of look like? So like, estrangement doesn't have to last forever if you don't want it to, is what you're saying.
I think it really depends on the situation.
Yeah.
I think that there are some situations that cannot be repaired depending on the amount of harm that was done. And the number one factor that decides whether it's possible is that both people need to want to reconnect and to repair. Mm-hmm. And then the number two aspect, and this goes back to the emotional safety, is that estrangement happens because the emotional safety is eroded. So the analogy I often use is if you think about your relationship like a wooden bridge, and bridges go through normal wear and tear, and that's just the hard knocks of life in a relationship. Mm-hmm. But sometimes some things happen where it really damages the bridge. Estrangement is what happens when so much damage happens to that bridge that was never repaired, that there's no more way of using the bridge to bridge between the relationship anymore. And so repair is so essential, but so many of us were not taught how to repair. So I would say the number one thing is that both people actually want it. And then the second thing is that the approach to that needs to be from an open-minded perspective and curiosity. And that curiosity is so important because it's not from a place of defensiveness. It's not from a place of, I don't want to be wrong. It's got to be from a place of, I want to understand your perspective so that we can get closer to actually starting to repair the bridge. There's no way of repairing if that doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. And it actually goes both ways, but it goes more for the person often who did more of the harm than it does for the person who received the harm.
Okay.
It's really important. And then the next thing after that is something I call the 3 A's. I teach this to my kids as well. It's the 3 A's to an actual apology that is effective.
Okay.
So the first one is attention. So the attention of an apology is on the other person. It's not on me. And there's something I often will talk about, which is impact over intention. So the impact of what happened matters more than your intention behind it.
I say that all the time, but I say it less eloquently than you. You said that really kindly. What I say is, I don't care what your intention is. Like, you did it, and it was wrong, and it was hurtful. That's normally how I say it, but your way is much better.
So the analogy I use often is like, if you are making a batch of hot chocolate for the other person and you put all your love and attention in, got the best ingredients you could, right? And it's gorgeous. And then you pour it for them, and then some of it spills on their hand and they burn. So your intention and all the love you put into that hot chocolate is meaningless to healing that burn. It doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. You saying, I didn't mean to, also doesn't matter because it doesn't actually heal the burn. The only thing that's going to help that burn is if you flush it under cold water, you treat it, bandage it, whatever you need to do, and then allow it to heal. Like that's what's going to help.
Right.
All the other stuff doesn't help. So that's why the intention and the attention on the other person really matters. Because so often when we're giving an apology, we're giving it from my perspective. I didn't mean it that way. I didn't mean for that to happen. I didn't know, right? Like all those kind of things. But that's your attention on you. The attention needs to be on the other person, on the impact that they felt. I'm so sorry that really hurt you. Mm-hmm. And then the second thing is accountability for what you caused.
Yeah.
And I don't think I need to expand on that. And then the third one, I shouldn't. And then the third one is action. That what are you going to do to make the change so it doesn't happen again? Because if you're going to keep doing the same things, then the apology is meaningless. Mm-hmm. Because it means you don't really care. It was just a bunch of words.
Right.
So there's got to be those 3 things. And so my kids actually, we sometimes will go through the apology and go, what are the different things and what's missing? Why did that apology not feel good to you? Mm-hmm. Like sometimes.
Yeah, because often you'll say, I'm sorry, but you're like, I still don't feel better.
Yeah.
Like you don't get it. You still don't get it.
Yeah, because an effective apology, you will feel better immediately.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love that, the 3 A's. Mm-hmm. And it's really simple and makes a lot of sense when you can identify it that way.
So in an estrangement situation, it's that, but it ends up being multiplied over many things. And it's about going back and repairing some of those harms and then starting to build the bridge again and starting to reestablish the trust and the emotional safety and that's, I think, the key thing. And that's why it's so important to have an openness and curiosity instead of defensiveness, because the defensiveness will just destroy the safety. Because there's actually none already, or very, very little. That's why there's an estrangement happening.
Right.
So if that does not get reintroduced, then there's not going to be enough of a foundation to even be able to repair. So it's essential.
What's tricky is, this obviously takes time to build that security again with that other individual, and no one's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
People are going to fall through the cracks and make mistakes. And so, like, what kind of mindset do you encourage people to, like, how much do you let go, forgive, give the person an opportunity? Because also it's like you're working towards something, and if they fall every 3 steps, or every time you take a step forward, you take 2 back, then what's the point of all this? Like, why am I even repairing this relationship?
Yeah, I think that it really comes down to the people involved in the situation. I know of situations where, someone is trying to repair with another person who is just completely unwilling to look at themselves, to take accountability and to change. And it's just not going to get repaired. Right. Versus someone who's authentically trying hard, but fell into an old pattern, because we all make mistakes. Yeah. And then come back and trying again. Where I can see that they're making an effort and they're being very intentional, that they've taken accountability deeply, truly. And that to me makes all the difference. So then in those moments where they fall, because my family went through this,
of course. I mean, everybody does.
Like we've, and I feel like in some cases, I was the other person. Like I was the person that caused harm. And I was the person that didn't realize. And it took some communication for me to understand what was going on and to take a step back from, So, and in those situations, to be able to get to a point of being able to name the thing that was happening or to give grace. Like with one of my relationships, the way that we approach it is, okay, like trust has been eroded on both sides. And there's been misunderstanding on both sides. There's been harm done from both sides. So we are reapproaching this from ground zero, because trust cannot be leapfrogged. Right. There's no, you can't skip steps. Trust is built step by step, like a ladder. And so if it's been broken, you need to go back to the lowest rung where it was broken and rebuild again. So we actually took it right down to the bottom, as if we just met each other again from the bottom level, and we're going to rebuild from there, which also means that we're not talking about some of the deeper things, that are happening in life, because some of those things could actually unintentionally end up eroding trust or put too much strain on the relationship.
Right. It's like you have to put yourself back into that stranger mentality of, you're not going to ask someone, the deepest, darkest, their deepest, darkest secret or on the first occurrence of meeting someone. Yeah. So that takes time to build that trust, to confide in someone or let someone know how you're feeling, etc.
Yeah, exactly.
In terms of relationships, now I also know people who are estranged, or who are in a relationship but are estranged with family. And that for a lot of people can sometimes be seen as a red flag. Do you think that that's a red flag?
I don't. And the reason I don't is because, first of all, without understanding what the context actually was, I guess it depends on someone's perspective of what for them is a red flag. Like every family has conflict. Yeah. Every family has complexities. I think it really depends on the situation, on what led to the estrangement and what happened. But I ultimately look at it like, the reason I don't see it as a red flag is, one, it's so common. So are you going to cut out, like 25 to 30% of the audience or the population? Yeah. So it's so common. It's actually more common than people think. I actually think it's like the numbers growing. And the other aspect is no one takes the decision to become estranged. Yeah. Dismissively.
Yeah.
It's
Nobody
really
wants
hard.
that.
No one
Yeah.
actually wants it. We are hardwired for connection and belonging. And so to cut off the belonging by our own volition means dealing with a part of our nervous system that feels like we're going to die. Like that's basically what we're up against. And that the harm that was felt was so bad that I feel like I would rather deal with the emotion of feeling like my nervous system could die than to put myself back in that situation, which is worse than that. Like basically that's what we're dealing with. So for someone to have the self-awareness to make that decision for themselves and to hold a boundary, to me, means it requires a lot of emotional intelligence.
Green flag.
I actually think I'm not saying like go and look for people, right? Like it's not right, but it's a level of self-awareness.
That's the questioning you should be asking yourself as you're placing judgment on that other person. In saying that though, there's also so many partners, and I mean, I haven't encountered this before, but I feel like I would be one of them, honestly, to be like, how can I help you fix your relationship with your family? There's gotta be a way. Do you think that's like the worst thing to do as a partner?
I think it's a bad thing to do.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, very just straight up. And the reason is because without knowing the context and the situation. So for me, the healthiest relationships are where you really respect the other person and the choices that they've made.
Yeah.
That choice that they made is hard. They made a really hard choice. And if you just met them, I mean, like depending on how well you know them, no matter what, they made that choice at a time when it was very, very difficult for them. And so I think it's understanding those reasons. And even if you don't think the reasons were enough, they felt that they were.
Yeah.
And that's what matters. So support in the relationship is not pushing someone to do something that they don't want to do, especially something that is as painful as trying to reconcile with a family member that may have been really abusive to them.
Yeah, for sure. That's a difficult thing to accept if the person has come from, a really loving big family and wanting that for them. But there's a line.
Yeah.
There's a line, even in a partnership of like you said, respecting the other person enough. And maybe that's why it's hard for me to imagine, because I'm like, I don't know that I've ever felt that way about someone, that they're capable of making that decision on their own.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like that approach.
Yeah. And I think that if you want to support them in it, have the conversation. Like, I think it's okay to have the conversation and explore what reconciliation would feel like, if it's something they'd be open to what they would need for that to happen. Because I think the worst is if someone goes behind the person's back and tries to make it happen.
That never ends well.
No. But I think if it's a fluid, open conversation, then and depending on the context, depending on the situation, maybe things have changed, who knows? I personally believe that many relationships, I'm not going to say all, but I will say that many relationships that are estranged can likely be repaired so long as both people do the work. The trick is for both people.
And I feel like a challenge in both people willing to do the work is like a part of it too is not necessarily keeping score on things. Like it can't not also be like a tit for tat situation, because that's when that turns into a toxic relationship, like all over again.
Yeah. Keeping track is not good either.
So how do you find the balance of that, of making sure that someone is pulling their weight and showing up in the way that you hope? Because then that ties in the notion of expectation. And I struggle with that the most, because I feel like I put expectations on other people that I hold myself to, and then I'm disappointed because people don't measure up to how I would show up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I absolutely do. Yeah, that resonates a lot with me. I practice something I call matched energy. So for me, the relationships that I really embrace in my life, it's all about reciprocity. And it's not reciprocity tit for tat. It's more of an energetic reciprocity. Like, there is a care, there is a foundation of emotional safety, and it's more about how we support each other, how we're there for each other. And, sometimes it might be the things that we do for each other, but I feel like it's a very balanced, fluid, flowing dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can't describe it. It's like a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Versus the ones where it feels like they're transactionally trying to get something out of me, or it suddenly turns transactional because, you know, of whatever reason that might come up. That can happen. And I think that for me ultimately is such a determinant. Does it feel like reciprocity or does it feel like transaction? And then certain instances where matched energy comes in is I'm matching you on your energy in terms of my expectations, in terms of how much I'm giving. There can be relationship dynamics where, you know, maybe we were really close and we're spending a lot of time together and we're doing a lot of sharing and all of that. And all of a sudden maybe some things change.
Yeah.
And that can happen. You know, someone becomes a mom, or they get married, or they get a boyfriend, right? Like various things can happen. And I adjust my energy according to that dynamic. I'm not judging it to say you're not deserving of my energy. I'm more saying that I have a limited resource and I'm matching your energy in terms of what you're showing me, and meeting you at your level and adjusting my expectations accordingly as well. Because at the end of the day, like I can't be the 100% me to everyone. I would burn out.
Yeah, it happens for me from time to time, for sure.
Yeah.
And then I ask myself why, and it's because my cup is empty.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if you're not pouring anything into mine, and then at this point, like I have nothing left to give.
Yeah.
But accepting that too is kind of hard.
It's really hard.
It's hurtful.
It is hurtful. It is hurtful. And the relationships, it really depends on the situation. If it's the kind of relationship that you're able to talk about it, to say, you know, I really miss you. Mm-hmm. Or I'm noticing that the dynamic in our friendship has changed lately. You know, what are your thoughts on that? And, you know, sometimes that can also help ease. But I also personally believe that the action and what I'm witnessing is evidence of the dynamic in the friendship or the relationship that I have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Recognizing action-based before anything is really important, because I think we also make so many excuses for people and things with words.
Yeah.
And then it's as simple as, but did they do it?
Did they do it?
You know?
Yeah.
It can be so simple.
Yeah.
And yet it's so complicated.
It is complicated. and especially people that we spent a long time with too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For sure. Vivian, you have so many things that are exciting that are coming up. So tell me about some of the work that you have that people can be a part of in joining and look forward to and following you.
Oh yeah, thank you for asking. I'm working a lot of different things right now. I have a series of workshops that one of them is actually in a couple weeks, where I'm talking about nervous system intelligence, talking about emotional safety. How do you create it for yourself? So that's going to be in a couple weeks at the end of March. And then I have a women's retreat coming up in July, and that's going to be really beautiful in terms of really anchoring to your aliveness, you know, giving back to yourself as well. And that one is actually going to be inclusive of my very first, what I call the living table. And the living table is a somatic food experience. So accessing somatics through food, where we intentionally set we set our intentions as we have each course, and each course is going to be a somatic experience in and of itself that I'm designing right now. So that's exciting.
So fun. Yeah. That's really cool.
Yeah. So I will be bringing this to Toronto as well, but the first one is going to be at this retreat.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm really excited for
Thank you.
And where can people find you, follow you, read your books?
Yeah. Oh, actually, like speaking of books, I have another book that's going to be coming out.
Oh, casual. Sorry, we buried the lead in this entire podcast. You have another book coming out.
So it's coming. I'm working on it. So,
okay. Can you tell us anything about it?
I can, yeah.
Okay.
This book is called Worthy, and it's about the lies that we're told that keep us small.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And how we start to undo some of those patterns. So that one I'm working on right now.
Lovely.
Yeah.
And when is that supposed to come
that
out?
One,
no pressure in writing it, by the way. Yeah. Getting it done. But
that one is probably going to be towards the end of this year or early next, realistically.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, and now plug yourself on social media where we can follow you and find you.
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram, Vivian Meraki, and TikTok and YouTube, and my website is vivianmeraki.com.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. You really have this, I mean, I can tell you do what you do for a reason, because you have this like calm energy about you that's like really nice to be in your orbit. And yeah, I really enjoyed this conversation.
Me too.
So thank you.
Thank you so much.